This is not a true story, but it's true to us.
We tend to think of ghosts as the spirits of the dead, but in the waiting rooms of the modern world, there are living ghosts, migrants, undocumented workers, men and women who hold up the economy while existing in legal limbo. This is the story of Aziz, a history teacher who crossed an ocean in search of opportunity, stability, and survival, only to discover that the real cost of migration wasn't distance, it was losing the right to be seen. At the time of this story, Aziz is 32 years old. He lives in a country where the sun is hot, the dust is orange, and the community is everything. Aziz is a teacher. Every day he stands in a classroom with peeling paint and teaches teenagers about the Industrial Revolution, about democracy, about the great economies of the North. The irony is cruel. He spends his days explaining how wealth was built elsewhere, but when the bell rings, he walks home to a life where he has to count every single coin. He is the eldest son. In his culture, that is not just a birth order, it is a job title. It means he is the pillar. His mother passed away 4 years ago, leaving a silence in the house that no one talks about. His father, a man of few words who spent his life herding cattle, is too old to work, so the weight falls on Aziz. He has a wife, Japa. Their marriage was arranged long before love had a chance to speak, but over time, duty softened into genuine love. She can make a feast out of scraps and loves Aziz with a fierce loyalty. They have 3 small sons. Aziz also has younger siblings who look at him like he is the bank, the father, and the roadmap all at once. Aziz loves them. He really does. But late at night, when the compound is quiet and the heat finally breaks, he stares at the ceiling and feels like he is drowning in shallow water. He feels that he is capable of more, but the ceiling of his life is built so low that he cannot stand up straight. By local standards, Aziz is lucky. He has a salary, but a salary here is like a handful of sand. Squeeze it too tight and it slips through your fingers. Then, the window opened. Or at least, Aziz thought it was a window. His uncle, Usman, came back. Usman was his father's stepbrother. He had left the country 30 years ago to go to the cold country in the north. For 30 decades, he was just a legend, a myth, the man who made it out. So when Usman arrived for a visit, the whole family gathered. They killed a goat. They prepared the best rice. They waited for the rich man to step out of the car. But when Usman arrived, he didn't look like a king. He looked tired. He wore a suit that was slightly too big, the kind you buy at a discount store. He didn't bring a fancy car. He didn't bring bags of gold. He brought small, modest gifts. Aziz watched his family. He saw the smiles drop. He heard the whispers in the kitchen. 30 years abroad, and this is all he has? They mocked Usman because he didn't fit their fantasy of success, but Aziz saw something else. To Aziz, his uncle wasn't a failure. He was proof that escape was possible. That night, Aziz cornered his uncle. He begged him, "Help me get there. Help me find a better job. I cannot breathe here anymore." But Usman shook his head, perhaps out of shame, or perhaps to protect Aziz from the struggle. He refused. "I cannot help you, nephew. Stay here." Aziz was crushed, but he was not stopped. If his uncle wouldn't open the door, he would break the lock himself. He began a secret life. By day, he taught history. By night, he sat in humid cyber cafes, the blue light of the screen reflecting in his tired eyes. He sent applications into the void, hundreds of them. For months, there was only silence. Then, a reply. A logistics company in the same city where his uncle lived needed a coordinator. They weren't looking for a supply chain expert. They needed someone who could manage chaos, someone organized with perfect grammar,
to handle the paperwork. They interviewed him over a crackling video call, and then the email came. "We would like to offer you the position." However, the battle wasn't over. Now came the paperwork. Aziz stood in long lines in the embassy, sweating in his best shirt, holding a folder of documents that proved his entire existence. He waited weeks, checking the status every single day. He told no one. Only Japa knew, and she prayed in silence. The day the message came, Aziz went to the collection center. He opened his passport. There it was, the visa. He went straight to his father. He sat the old man down and placed the passport on the table. "I am leaving," Aziz said. "You did this behind my back? You want to leave us like Usman left us?" "No," Aziz said. "I am going so this family can live." It took hours, but eventually Aziz convinced him. His father didn't give a blessing of joy, but he gave a nod of resignation. His siblings were ecstatic. They saw hope. And Japa, despite the fear of being left alone with 3 children, she stood taller than anyone. "Go," she said. "We will be here." Leaving is harder than arriving. Aziz arrived in the north in the dead of winter. The first thing that hit him was the air. It hurt. It felt like walking into a wall of ice. But the second thing that hit him was the silence. In his home, the streets were alive. People shouted, greeted each other, shared space. Here, people walked fast, eyes on the ground, headphones on. Aziz smiled at a stranger on the subway and said hello. The stranger looked at him with fear and moved away, and that was the moment it started. Aziz felt the coldness of the people, and as a reaction, he began to wrap himself in his culture like it was a shield. Back home, he had never been the patriotic type. He had complained about the underdevelopment, the disorder, the nosy neighbors. But here, suddenly, in his mind, his country became perfect. It was homesickness, dressed up as pride. He was holding on to a fantasy of home because the reality of this new place was too cold to touch. He moved into Usman's apartment, and quickly the reality set in. Usman wasn't the master of his own house. He was married to a local woman who didn't care about his family. She looked at Aziz like he was a stain on the carpet. She threatened Usman constantly. "If he stays too long, I will call the authorities. You know the rules." Usman, the man the family back home thought was a king, was a prisoner in his own kitchen. So, 2 months later, Usman had to ask Aziz to leave. He gave him the number of a friend who rented beds, and he apologized. Aziz walked out into the snow, carrying his suitcase, realizing that his uncle's warning was real. The cold was not just the weather, it was the people. Aziz went to the job he had fought so hard to get. He was a history teacher, a man of books, but now he was a man of boxes and schedules. He worked hard, he was efficient, and when he got his first paycheck, he stared at the number. It was huge. In his home currency, this amount would feed a village for a month. He felt a surge of pride. He had made it. Then reality did the math. He sat down and started subtracting. Rent for a shared room with strangers? Gone. Transportation pass? Gone. Taxes? A huge chunk. Gone. Social security for a system he barely understood? Gone. In his home country, the economy was informal. What you earned was yours. Here, the state took its share first. By the time he paid for food and a phone card to call Japa, he had almost nothing. He realized with horror that he was poor. Aziz was an economic migrant working full-time in a rich country and still poor, but he couldn't tell his family that. When he called home, he lied. He said everything was great. Why? Because hope is the only currency his family had left, and he couldn't steal it from them. He eventually moved into a tiny studio apartment because he couldn't stand the bad roommates anymore.
Aziz started experiencing a loneliness that was a myth in his community back home. But he had a plan: work, save, bring the family. Then the trap snapped. Aziz was smart. At the warehouse, the other workers looked up to him.
One day, a co-worker named Malik came to him. Malik was charming, another immigrant who seemed to know the ropes. "We are underpaid," Malik said. "We need to protest. You speak well, Aziz. You used to be a teacher. You should lead us." Aziz believed in justice. He believed in solidarity. So he led the group. He asked for a fair wage, but it was a setup. When the management pushed back, Malik didn't stand with Aziz. Malik stepped back. The management fired Aziz for being a troublemaker, and guess who took his position? Malik. Aziz was jobless, and in this system, if you don't have a job, you lose your papers. Aziz fell into legal limbo, undocumented. He became a ghost. He couldn't apply for real jobs anymore. He had to work in the shadows, delivery apps, cleaning toilets for cash, dangerous construction gigs, and he lived in fear. Every police siren made his heart stop. He stopped looking people in the eye. He shrank. And then the phone rang. It was his brother. His dad collapsed that morning. The doctors said it was an intestinal blockage. His bowels were twisted. They needed to operate as soon as possible. Aziz checked his pockets. He had nothing, but he couldn't say no. He was the pillar, remember? He went to his illegal boss and asked for an advance. The boss laughed and threatened to call the police. He went to Usman. Usman had no money to give. So Aziz did the only thing he could. He took dangerous jobs. He worked for 72 hours straight, lifting, running, not sleeping. He borrowed from loan sharks. He scraped together every cent and sent it home. The family replied, "He is doing better. The money helped. Don't worry." Aziz exhaled. He had saved him. 1 week later, they called again. His father had died. The truth came out later. He was dying the whole time. They lied to Aziz because they didn't want him to worry. They took the money to make the old man comfortable in his final days. Aziz broke. He wanted to go home for the funeral. He needed to bury his father, to see him one last time. But if he left the country now with no papers, he could never come back. He would return with debt, with failure, with nothing. He spoke to Jainaba on the phone, weeping in his dark apartment. She told him the hardest truth of all. Baba told us, before he died, he said, "Tell Aziz not to come back. Tell him not to bury his future in my grave." It was in that moment, broken by grief, that something shifted. Even before the call about his father, Aziz had already been toying with the idea of going back home. The loneliness, the fear, the constant pressure, it had all been wearing him down. Part of him was ready to give up, to return with whatever dignity he had left. But as he spoke to Jainaba now, his thoughts became clearer. He understood that his blind nationalism was holding him back. The idea that home was perfect and this new place was evil didn't help anyone. It wouldn't feed his children. It wouldn't bring his father back. So he made a decision. His nation would no longer be a flag or a border. His nation would be the place that allowed him to build a future. And even then, he knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't forget where he came from. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't. So, Aziz stayed. He sat alone in his room while his family buried his father thousands of miles away. He mourned in silence. Over time, Aziz stopped being afraid. He found an NGO, a group of people who help ghosts like him. They looked at his case and they helped him fight. It took time. It took endless paperwork. But eventually, he got his status back. He got the right to work. He walked into a job interview for a logistics manager. The company tried to lowball him, offering him a tiny salary because they saw he was an immigrant. The old Aziz would have taken it. The new Aziz, the one who had survived the cold and the dark, said no. They called him back the next day. He got the job. Yes! 3 years later, he walked through the arrival gate in the airport in his home country. He wasn't moving back. He was there to get his wife and children. He stepped out into the heat of the city. He saw the dust,
The broken roads, the struggle etched on the faces of the taxi drivers. He saw the beauty, yes, but he also saw the hunger. He stood there for a moment, thinking about the cold, lonely city he had just left, and a thought crossed his mind, bitter but true. Even if the grass is greener on the other side, at least they have grass. His family took him to his father's grave. It was a simple mound of earth. Aziz stood there, his shoes gathering dust. He knelt down and touched the dirt. He realized that his father had pushed him away so that Aziz could stand here today. It was a transaction, a life for a life.
And Aziz didn't just come back to take, he wanted to give. He noticed something. The women in his community were using harsh, imported soaps that damaged their skin. The local resources, the shea butter, the oils, were being ignored. So Aziz invested his savings. He didn't build a big house to show off. He started a small business making local, natural soap. He hired local women, realizing that the only way to truly win was to build something that grew in his own soil, even if he lived far away. He brought his family back with him. Finally, they were together. The apartment was warm. The kids were in school. He had won. He survived migration. But the story doesn't end with a happily ever after. It ends with a vibrating phone. Now that Aziz is successful, now that he has papers, he has become the bank for everyone he left behind. They call it the black tax, the cost of making it out. And our next protagonist knows exactly how heavy that bill can be.